Welcome to the Waiting Warriors podcast. I'm Michelle Bowler. I'm an Army wife of over 8 years, a mom of 4 little girls, and a huge believer that being a supportive military or first responder loved one is way easier when you connect with a community. In addition to sharing some of my own insights and journey, I have set out to interview waiting warriors around the world so we can all learn together from their triumphs and their struggles. Together, we can do so much more than just survive. We can thrive. And that is what being a waiting warrior is all about.
Hey, Waiting Warriors out there. Welcome to another very special week on the Waiting Warriors podcast. My name is Michelle Bowler. I'm your host. And today we have Kristen Christy. Welcome to the show, Kristen.
Thank you so much. Thanks for the opportunity.
Of course. So this episode will be the first of September's Suicide Prevention and Awareness Month series on the podcast. So just warning for everybody listening, that's what we're talking about. Kristen has been deeply affected by suicide. So if you need tissues, anytime I have like suicide or a gold star family member, I just feel like I should warn you guys, like you can grab your tissues now if you would like. So yes, I'll kind of introduce Kristen fully in a minute, but before I do, the first question I kind of want to ask is if you would be willing to kind of talk about the verbiage of suicide. People, it's I think most commonly heard as committed suicide, but I know, but maybe it's just because we're kind of like, my husband's a chaplain, so we're kind of in the mental health sphere. They're trying to shift it to completed suicide, but some people, don't like that. They like it worse. So I would like to respect you and where you're comfortable, but also hear your point of view. You are in this world of what does completed versus committed mean to you?
So I know some people it's a very sensitive subject, so I really appreciate you asking, and I know other people do. For me, I was an athlete in high school, and I committed to a college for my scholarship.
Okay.
So for me, my frame of reference is a scholarship committing to a school. I live here in Colorado Springs, and we get information on our Twitter feeds and social media about cadets or high school graduates who are committing to go to the Air Force Academy.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, committed suicide, it doesn't register as like committing a crime. I know that a lot of people are trying to navigate toward completed suicide or died by suicide. But for me, it truly doesn't matter.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Just
thank you.
Thank you for expanding, because I know it means different things to different people, and I want to respect your come from. So the proper introduction: Christy is the owner of Kristen. Kristen is the owner of Kristen Christy LLC, co-founder and president of NV3 Foundation, which is a veteran nonprofit, and the creator of National Resilience Day, which is March 4th and Conquer, which I love so much. She was married to her first husband, who died by suicide after 17 years of marriage. And I do kind of want to just say he was a lieutenant colonel. Like, I know a lot of people just don't, again, just to kind of talk about and break stereotypes or whatever. And now is married to an Air Force reservist. She has 2 sons, a 27-year-old who has been missing for over 5 years. Sorry. Then a 25-year-old who's a government employee at Edwards Air Force Base. I'm sorry. I did not mean to.
No. So Michelle, I just, there is no apology necessary.
Mm-hmm.
I think we grieve over things We all have a different frame of reference. We've all gone through tests in our life. But grieving is a product of loving.
Yeah.
And joy. So I try not to apologize anymore when I start tearing up, because that just means I'm empathetic, and you're empathetic. So thank you for being empathetic with me.
Yeah. I cannot imagine. And I don't want to like totally jump to the end of your story, because I know your whole story doesn't get like confusing for everyone else. So if you would, guys, if you couldn't tell, Kristen's amazing. She's incredible. Just the things that she has done throughout her whole life, but also just even if you just take the last 10 years now, am I right? 10 years of her life, the amount of trials and heartache that she has been through is astounding, but also like terrifying to think that one soul could have to go through that. And yet you've gone through that and created so many amazing, incredible things that help countless others, particularly our military community that suffers so much. So I am like truly honored that you are here.
Thank you, Michelle.
But if you wouldn't mind, because I know you're just like you're an incredible storyteller and powerful at it. If you would tell us our story, I'd be greatly honored.
Absolutely. So I grew up in the Air Force. So the only way of life I've known is Air Force or military, because we lived on joint bases.
Okay.
Growing up. We moved every 2 years. I was fortunate enough to be a Far Eastern brat and a European brat and a US brat, and loved it because I'm an uber extrovert. I love meeting people and the new cultures. And so when I went off to college at the University of Texas in Austin, I graduated from Wiesbaden, the DoD high school in Wiesbaden, Germany. 156 students are in my senior class, off to the largest university in 1985. I mean, largest university population-wise.
Okay.
So I needed to find my community, and where did I feel most comfortable? And that was at the ROTC building. I did not join the military myself, and I wish I could have. Unfortunately, I had a massive stroke in high school.
Oh, wow.
And had to learn to walk again. That's a whole nother story.
Oh.
But my silver lining came from that. So this is natural. I get that question a lot, but it is natural. I didn't do it on purpose. Mm-hmm. So I hung out at the RTC building, and one thing led to another, and I went to a party, and there was one person in the room I didn't know, and it bothered me, being an uber extrovert. I need to know everyone. And I went right up to him, and I said, "Hi, I'm Kristen Anderson." And he said, "Hi, I'm Don Christy, and we can never get married." And I'm looking at him like, what kind of pickup line is that? And he looked at me and he said, "You would be Kristen Christy." Well, 5 months later, we were engaged. He was in Air Force ROTC. So very comfortable. We just had a lot of fun together, and we were looking forward to the new chapters in life. And he was a missileer, so we went up to Grand Forks, North Dakota. Great place to start our family and raise our kids. And we were there for 4 years and then moved to Colorado Springs. And we had our second son, Ben, here in Colorado Springs. And we were here a few years, and he came home from active duty. And he said, "I'm thinking about getting out of the military. My career is not going the way I wanted it to." And you would have thought my world was ending. I'm so used to having that ID card.
Yeah.
For those brats out there, when you turn 10 years old, yeah. I mean, you are so excited to get that ID card. You wear it around your neck. I went to the Shopette as soon as we got home and made them card me. Like I do now. I make them card me. But it was really a shock. And he explained the reserve part, the reserve component. And it truly was the best of both worlds, is the way we felt about it. And he was a traditional reservist, had a civilian job and all that. And then they really needed him to start the reserve space program here in Colorado Springs in the late 90s. Mm-hmm. And so he went full time. Well, back then, you could kind of homestead in the reserve. You didn't have to move around to get promoted and things like that. So we built a custom home. Wow. We were raising our 2 boys. We figured Colorado Springs was it. As long as he promised me we could still travel overseas. I missed that part. So we were planning on staying in Colorado Springs for his entire career. Mm-hmm. And then, of course, things changed. He became a squadron commander, which is like a battalion in the Army, about 300 people. And he came home one day and said, I have been tasked with getting volunteers for deployment to Baghdad. And he did not feel right asking for volunteers unless his name was at the top of the list. And I still remember that day he came home, and it was almost like he was asking my permission, but I knew that he had to go regardless. But then I knew that he was a true leader, because a manager or supervisor says go, and a true leader says let's go. And he said let's go by saying my name has to be at the top of the list. Mm-hmm. He was the only one chosen. And in 2004, he went to Baghdad. We knew that he was second in command at the Baghdad airport. We didn't hear much other than that. He really did not share what he did there. We would email him at night. The boys and I would email him at night. And by the time we got up in the morning, we would have an email back from him most days. We didn't have Skype back then.
Yeah.
And he came back after 4.5 months. And we had heard about Toby Keith taking a nap on his couch when he was going through for a USO tour, and meeting the Secretary of Defense on the flight line, any of the DVs that come through, but really nothing else. But he came back different. We hear it a lot, don't we, Michelle?
Yeah.
We hear it pre-deployment, during deployment, those meetings that we have with our SFRG or our Airmen and Family Readiness, things to watch out for and all. And he came home, and I communicated with him, and I said, I'm not going to give you the finances back right away. I'm not going to throw things at you now that you're home. We're going to have some transition and some family time and all. But there was still something off. And I think I was just so close to it that sometimes we have our blinders on as family members.
Yeah.
His fingernails were bitten down to the nubs. He was an introvert, but still, he was more reserved than typical. Wasn't sleeping very well. One of the things we joked about that he brought back from Baghdad was aromatherapy. So he would go smoke a cigar on the back patio. That was his aromatherapy. I dealt with it just outside. So we tried to communicate, and I knew something was wrong. And you've had Corey Weathers on before in her book, and that's exactly what we called those things that we couldn't talk about sacred spaces. Mm-hmm. And it was before her book. I mean, it just happened to be, but that phrase is so true. Yeah. And it wasn't clearance related that he couldn't talk to me about or anything like that. It just, he couldn't verbalize, but I knew something was wrong. Then we got the opportunity to go to Carlisle Barracks for Army War College.
Okay.
And I thought, okay, this is a great time, because my family, when my dad was in the Air Force, we went to Air War College. And I remember that year, those 11 months, is just a great opportunity for our family. And I thought, okay, this is the time where we become a family again and really have that respite time. Mm-hmm. And it was a good year, but there was still something off. So I started going to therapy when we were at Carlisle. We were supposed to move to Washington, D.C. He was supposed to have a follow-on at the Pentagon. So we had sold that custom home in Colorado Springs. We figured, okay, the reserve has changed its MO, and we are moving and things like that. And about 6 weeks before we moved to the DC area, they said, no, we need you back in Colorado Springs. So we were gone for 11 months. We moved back. Our house was not available. I asked if we could buy the house back. If you don't ask, the answer is always no. If you ask, you have a chance. If you have a chance, take it. If it changes your life or someone else's life, let it. So we bought a new house. We got embedded in a new neighborhood and community in Colorado Springs. But our friends, their lives had gone on for 11 months without us.
Yeah.
And we come back in, and it was a hard adjustment. Not so much for the kids, Ryan and Ben. We had 2 boys. But for the 2 of us, it was. So 4 years after Don went on his deployment, the coroner showed up in my house. He was 3 days from pinning on Colonel, and he had taken his life. Our boys were 14 and 12 at the time. I remember, it's been 12 years, Michelle, and I remember so clearly, the glaze in my boys' eyes. And you talked about in the beginning, you know, suicide does not discriminate.
Yeah.
It truly doesn't. I've seen comments from our videos. People said, well, he was an officer, life was good. That doesn't pertain to me. And I'm like, how good was his life if he ended up taking his own life?
Yeah.
That just shows you that it's not the typical. What we did not realize and did not know, and I truly think that this is what got to the core of it, was being second in command of the Baghdad airport. He was in charge of the human remains. He made sure that each one of those casualties had a dignified and respectful transport home to their loved ones. And I think it weighed so heavily on him that he couldn't talk about it.
Yeah.
He was not at the end of the trigger. You know, he sat behind a desk. You do not have to be a combat vet. You do not have to be in the military to have PTS.
Yeah.
So the aftermath is what I talk about in my presentations and my training.
Mm-hmm.
Because I don't think we hear enough about that. And it took me 10 years before I could talk about it, because I know that you've had other people on your podcast that have talked about this. There's guilt, there's shame. And I've come to learn that even though I felt guilty at the time, it wasn't really guilt, because what I did, I feel like the definition of guilt is you do something wrong that you know is wrong. Mm-hmm. But regret is when you did the best that you could, not realizing you did the best that you could without realizing what the outcome could be.
Yeah.
And I use our past story to help other people understand. Some people call suicide very selfish. And I've come to realize that I think when you're in that darkness, and it could be just for a few minutes, when you're in that darkness, you aren't thinking just of yourself. It's not, it's the voices in your head that are telling you you're a burden. You want to make things better, for everyone else. Sometimes it is you want to stop the pain that you're feeling. You mentioned our oldest son, Ryan, is 27. He has been missing for 1,948 days today. September 20th of 2015 is the last day I saw him. The suicide triggered bipolar in him early. He was 16 when he was diagnosed. I'm a woman of faith. I stand on a firm foundation. I'm a daughter of the King. And I fully believe that we go through adversities, and that builds perseverance, and perseverance builds character, and character builds hope. There is hope. Hope stands for hold on, pain eases. It doesn't end, it eases. And I want to challenge your listeners and your viewers. Whose capital E are you? You help ease the pain for someone else, and someone else helps ease the pain for you. Hope also stands for help one person every day.
I love that.
If you can think about that, the hope by helping one person every day could be the hope of hold on, pain eases. But we don't know the battle that people are waging in their life. We wear, social media. We put our A game on social media. And those people who are brave enough to put their not so good days on social media, you'll see a lot of the comments, and it turns people off, and it shouldn't. That should bring us, magnetize us as a community in to help each other out. That's so important. But we were not made to do life alone.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So that isolation, you see a lot of people that are surrounded by people and they're still lonely. They don't have that connection. And how do we get that connection? After my presentation, I get some questions. How do we get the millennials and the younger generation, the globals, to take the earbuds out, to stop being connected and really get connected? And they are connected. They, with their earpods on or as they're playing games, they're connected. Let's teach them how to connect one-on-one humanly with each other while they're connected technology-wise. When they start to play a game, why don't they say, hey, how's school going? Or how's work going? Yeah. Hey, you talked about your mom last time. How's she do it? It's interjecting that and having that interpersonal relationship, even if it's over Zoom or half a world away.
Yeah. It's being that ease of pain for somebody.
And helping them out, helping one person every day. Yeah. Every day. It's not a whole lot to ask. And the beauty is that one person feels so wonderful when you reach out to them. And then you feel wonderful. So it's really two people.
Yeah. But
HTPE doesn't really help two people every day.
That is good of an acronym.
Another acronym. But I think as we go through adversities, and it doesn't have to be suicide, we talk about adversity, big A and little a, right? Suicide is a big A. Miscarriage is a big A. Divorce is a big A. Flat tire, most people will think little a. Spilling coffee on your outfit before you go for a job interview, which I've done before. Oh, no. In the scheme of things, little a. But it's not a comparison. It's pain level. When you go to the doctor, they give you that little smiley face to sad face, and they say, what's your pain level? 1 through 10. We've all experienced a 10 out of 10. It's all relative. but we have empathy. So I call myself the human support, or I call myself the emotional support human, like an emotional support pet or service animal. I'm the service human. I want to come alongside because I've learned lessons that I think I can help tutor people through the lessons that they're learning already.
Yeah.
And it sets my soul on fire, girl. I want to take some of that emotional pain from people if I can and help be their biggest cheerleader and let them know that they can do it and that they are resilient, but they don't have to do it alone.
Yeah. How do you get to this place when you have been through so much? Like you lost your husband, you but like just losing your husband, that had huge implications on your everyday life and your income and where you lived and how you lived, but then also with your sons that dramatically affect your sons, where one you don't, you have not had contact with for years. Like the world would say you have every right to be bitter and to be swallowed up and to hate suicide's not the right, but like to be angry, and yet you speak with a smile on your face, you live with an exclamation point in your life, which we'll tell that story in a second, or you can tell it right now. Like how do you get to that point? Literally the exclamation point.
Yes, my exclamation point. So Michelle, it's been 12 years since Don's suicide. I was angry, I was bitter, I was grieving. I did not want to be a mother. I did not want that responsibility of trying to care for these two boys when I am torn apart and going through so many different emotions. I didn't want to get out of bed. And there were some days that I didn't, and the boys missed school because I couldn't get my butt out of bed. And I wanted to be in a fetal position, and sometimes I did, and it's okay. But I had people that came alongside and said, we are going to help you. You are not alone in this. A few years later, my oldest son was going to homecoming. Did I know how to tie a tie? No. But we had male figures, not father figures, but male figures in their life that would come alongside and help them in that regard. I cannot be a mother and a father. No one can. And so when we had people that offered to help, I had a whole list already of things that they could help. Because you've been on the other side of that, right? When you see someone hurting and you're like, let me know if there's anything I can do, especially, being a chaplain spouse and all that. You all are a team and you deal with that. So have a list ready, or more importantly, when a friend is grieving, you have a list ready of things that maybe they would need. And so they have a list handy when people say, can I do this?
Yeah.
We just went through a good friend passed away, not of suicide, but I've been staying with the family. I've been helping them with the funeral arrangements. And so we've been getting, well, if there's anything I can do. So that's when I help them shoot up. Well, you can scan the pictures to do the PowerPoint at the funeral. And how about you do the thank you notes that the family can sign for the meals? Why don't you do a meal train? The best time to figure that stuff out is when you're in a good place.
Yeah.
But I did not do all of that alone. Yes, I was in the deep, dark despair of being embarrassed that I didn't do enough. I failed as a spouse. I failed as a mother. Fail. Well, fail stands for first attempt in learning or further attempt in learning. And it was my friends that helped me understand that.
Yeah.
So now that's the past. I don't live in the past. I remember the past. I remember the lessons that I learned so I can help other people. Ryan is missing, and I pray that he's on this side of heaven. And if he's not, I know where he is because my kids grew up in the church. I just want to know as a mom.
Yeah.
Then my younger son is 25, doing really well, but he has a tough time still. Every once in a while, he'll get in, and that's when he knows he needs to reach out to friends.
Yeah.
And he shouldn't be ashamed of doing that.
Yeah.
Because they need him as much as he needs them. Again, we don't know what we're all dealing with. So it took a while. It took us a while to get back on our feet. I mean, we went on food stamps, and it was a long story with the life insurance and all that. We went from, I had to sell my house, buy a new house in 6 weeks. I started off as a receptionist. I hadn't worked for 15 years.
Yeah.
We had to rebuild our life. And I am who I am because of and in spite of the circumstances. But now I see the joy in life. I want to spread that joy. My friends know me as the human exclamation point. That's the exclamation point. Yeah. And even my logo for my consulting and coaching business has exclamation points on it.
Yeah.
So I've since remarried. So Sean and I met on Match.com. He was in the Navy Reserve. And I told him I didn't understand his acronyms. So I convinced him to swap over to the Air Force. So I'm a recruiter too. You're welcome, Air Force.
Here's your stipend.
Right, exactly. But I've told Sean and Ben, I said on my tombstone, because the day will come, I want my birth date and my death date with an exclamation point in between.
Yeah.
Because I lived my life with joy, with passion, with, as my grandmother would say, with gumption, with grit. Yeah. And can you imagine walking through a cemetery and seeing this headstone with an exclamation point in between? What would you think? What would you think of that person?
I would smile and be like, yeah, they lived it. Yeah.
Yep, exactly. And when you can shine on and when you can help people just smile, even when you're 6 feet under. My mom, bless her heart, I tell you, she was a fantastic woman. She passed away in 2016 unexpectedly, but she had always said, I want a party, a celebration of life, and it's called a fun roll, not a funeral.
I like it.
So we had fun at her fun roll.
Yeah. That needs to be a word in the dictionary.
Yes, it does.
I love it.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for sharing those very intimate details. Like that's it's hard to say out loud. It's hard to hear, but I think it's important for us all to hear, and because you can at the other side like have an exclamation point. I can't say that word.
You can get through it, Michelle.
Yeah.
Everyone can get through it, but not alone. Mm-hmm. And that's, to me, that's what resiliency is all about. It's not about bouncing back, because when you bounce back, you're typically in the same spot. I do not want to be in the same spot. Mm-hmm. I want to get through it. but we don't do it alone because there are other people that have gone through something similar. And when we can tell our story and then let people get in touch with us if need be, or, we do life together.
Mm-hmm.
Life is a 4-letter word. Is it a negative 4-letter word, or is it a word like play and love? Those are 4-letter words.
Mm-hmm.
And golf, or free is a 4-letter word. Free is an acronym for foster relationships energetically everywhere.
You just like pulled it out of the hat. You're so good.
I'm writing a book on acronyms, but not the boring ones like DOD, Department of Defense, or
Good ones.
MOS or AFSC, no, the good ones: fail, fear, false evidence appearing real, free, no, next opportunity.
Mm-hmm.
Our kids are really good at that one.
Yeah.
If dad says no, they find the next opportunity with mom.
It's true. I'm curious, what would you say to either a service member or their loved one who's going through thoughts of suicide, contemplating suicide? Somebody who hasn't completed yet. What would you say to somebody who's been on the other side of it all?
I would ask them to think about their family and their community, to think about asking for help. There are so many resources out there available to them. I would stick with them. I would stay with them. If it was a personal, I'd drop everything. I know it's not convenient. So many times, asking that question, are you thinking about suicide? Are you thinking about taking your life? We don't ask that question because I think we're afraid of the answer.
Mm-hmm.
Because if the answer is yes, what do we do with that?
Yeah.
And that's where I think we, as a military community, spouse, service member, even veteran, why are veterans?
Yeah.
Because they raise their right hand to take the oath of service. So I call our active duty pre-veterans.
Mm-hmm.
Where we find the resources that are needed. The chaplains, I foot stomp the chaplain's office, 100% confidential, and you do not have to step foot in a church service.
Mm-hmm.
And they are equipped with the tools that we need to help combat this battle that we're waging in our own lives. But when we know the resources available, so we feel comfortable to ask, are you thinking about taking your life? Because it's amazing when someone notices, is a noticer, and so empathetic when they can verbalize that.
Mm-hmm.
It kind of takes that person, it shocks them sometimes into realize, oh, someone notices, someone sees me, they care about me. It can make all the difference in the world. But if you are equipped with the resources available, it makes it so much easier. And it's how do we get over those barriers? So one of the things I did 2 years ago is working with Senator Cory Gardner from the state of Colorado and coming up with a 3-digit number for mental health emergency. So right now, the National Suicide Prevention Hotline is 10 numbers.
Yeah.
And most people can remember, if they've heard it, they know the last 4 spell TALK, TALK.
Right.
So,
I've
but
seen
when
that
we have
times. Yeah.
yeah,
But I can't
when
remember.
we have a medical emergency, we dial 911.
Yeah.
Easy to remember, right? So I helped with legislation to get 988 as the new National Suicide Prevention Hotline. Now, it's not active. It went through the Congress, it passed the Senate, and President Trump, former President Trump, signed it into executive order that the FCC has until the summer of 2022 to establish 988 as the new National Suicide Prevention Line.
Wow.
So instead of 10 numbers, so when you're in the dark, deep depths, you don't have time to look up 10 numbers. But more importantly, when someone you love and care about is in the dark, deep depths, you can get on the phone and call for them, 988. I am so excited that it finally passed. It's going to be a little while, but that's just one more barrier to break down.
Yeah. That's incredible that one, thank you for being involved with that, because like I said, like I've seen the number hundreds of times. I know I've handed it to people, but like I had to Google it real fast. Do you know what I mean? I love that it could just be 3 numbers that, 988. I already have it. There you go.
Yeah, good. All right.
I like
good. I can't wait for it to be enacted.
I just got to get that going. So one step at a time though. But I appreciate that answer, because that is that's a really hard question to ask. And I think I wonder if we think it enough while we're talking to somebody. But also, do we have the courage to act on it enough? And I hope that all of us listening, and I don't mean I hope you listeners are courageous enough, claiming that I have that courage. But honestly, one of the biggest reasons why I do this podcast series is because I need the reminders just as much as anybody. This needs to be a common conversation, and not that because I want it to be a part of everybody's daily life, but because I know we all need to be prepared for the moment that we don't want to face, but that somebody needs us and we need to be ready. So yeah, I hope we have the courage to ask the question if it pops up in our mind. If you have the thought that somebody is struggling, then ask them. And if they say no, then it's awesome. Something's bugging you though, it doesn't mean that, that's not a condemning question. It doesn't have to be that way.
I think, I don't know. So I'm speaking for myself. For a long time, I didn't trust my gut and my heart. If things would come to my mind or weighed heavily on my heart, I didn't trust my intuition. And now I do. I do. In fact, I was meeting with a friend last night, and she was talking about something, and I just stopped her and I said, wait a minute, something is not right. I feel heavy. My heart is heavy for you. What's going on? And it took her by surprise, and she just opened up, and she was going through a situation that she didn't know that I had gone through a number of years ago. So here it is.
Yeah.
I'm tutoring her through the lesson, or helping her navigate through the lessons that she's going through. So it's really listening to our own intuition and being brave enough to say, I have this feeling for a reason, and I need to get outside my comfort zone, because this person's life may depend on it.
Yeah.
Their community may depend on it.
Yeah. An important lesson for us all.
Thank
you. Thank you again. Thank you so much for sharing. I know your story is very, very impactful. I mean, all those acronyms are super helpful that you just come up with. You have, you bring so much awareness, but you also bring so much light. And I appreciate everything that you do and everything you are. Thank you. Thank you so much. Last question. If somebody wants to connect with you, if they want to learn more, if they want to get involved with everything you're doing, what's the best way for them to do that?
I think the best way is through my email.
Mm-hmm.
It's and my email is K as in Kristen, L as in lovable, Christy Christy at Comcast.net.
Okay.
That would be the best way. And I will give you a phone number too. I have a phone number. It's 620-304 HOPE.
Is that your really? That's awesome.
It is HOPE. So and if I can just tell you a little bit about the 304.
Yeah.
The third month is March. The fourth day is the 4th of March.
Yeah.
So this year, I heard today from the Biden people that my initiative of having a National Resilience Day is going to happen this year. I've been working on it for 8 years. I went to the State of the Union last year in 2020, and it was supposed to happen, but the whole COVID thing.
Yeah.
But it's March 4th because no matter what the obstacle, we put one foot in front of the other and we march forth and conquer.
That is so awesome. I am so excited for you. That is so cool.
So if there's one day a year that we can get out of bed, hold our heads up high, pull our shoulders back, and say, I've survived and I can help other people survive.
Yeah.
I want it to be March 4th. It means so much to me, and it has for a long time. In fact, that's my anniversary. I told Sean when he proposed to me, I said, yes, I'll marry you, but it has to be on March 4th. But it's just a mindset change. Yeah. But it's funny because Fort Bragg has asked me to come do a ruck march on March 4th. And so I'm looking at incorporating that into my training. And I'd love to do it's almost like a march for resources. So during this march, with heavy things in the rucksack, you get to take some things out that stand for an emotional, something emotional in your life. Yeah. And then you find out about different resources throughout the march. So very excited about that.
That is so cool. I want to hear more about that.
We'll connect and do that, and then be on the lookout for March 4th and conquer the National Resilience Day.
That is so cool. That's awesome. That just makes me happy. That's a thing now.
Thank you.
That's congratulations. That's a big deal. Wow. Cool. Well, thank you again on that note, guys. Thank you so much. Again, just if anybody out there is struggling, please just remember that you matter and you care. And if nothing else, then Michelle, I can't even say my own name. If nothing else, then Michelle Bowler and Kristen Christy really want you here, and we really care. And if you are struggling with a loss, again, we are here and we care. And I know that there's so much on this podcast episode that will help people who are hurting. So my heart goes out to Kristen. My heart goes out to all of you guys. Thank you so much for being on the show, Kristen. And Waiting Warriors, just remember, just because it's hard doesn't mean it has to be miserable. Thanks again, Kristen.
And hope is not canceled.
That's a good one. That's a good ending. Bye, guys.
Hey, Waiting Warriors, if you are in the middle of a deployment, heading into one, or shoot, you're just a military spouse who wants to get ahead of the deployment game, I have created a free resource just for you. It's a PDF file called 3 Ways to Set Up Your Marriage for a Successful Deployment. It is 3 quick things that you can do with your spouse that I've done with mine that really helped us through our number of separations. If you're watching on YouTube, there will be a link just in the caption. You can go to my website, thewaitingwarriors.com, and there's a yellow link with it on the top right, or you can go to subscribepage.com/3 3, like the number 3, ways to set up your marriage for a successful deployment. Okay? There will be a link in the bio and the show notes if you need it. Go check that out. Please take care of yourself, take care of your marriage, be intentional, and let me help you through this.